In the realm of law, few people have etched their names into the annals of justice quite like Jordan Whitaker. Revered as one of the finest black lawyers in the nation, Jordan wasn't merely a legal powerhouse. He was a beacon of hope in a world still grappling with the remnants of systemic racism. Born and raised in a modest neighborhood, he navigated the complexities of a society that often overlooked his capabilities, fueled solely by strength, ambition, and an unyielding desire to advocate for those who had been marginalized. Jordan's journey began at a small community college where he thrived, driven by the desire to understand the intricacies of law. Many of his peers came to know him not just for his sharp mind but for his ability to relate to their struggles. He excelled academically and earned a scholarship to a prestigious law school, where he swiftly distinguished himself as a force to be reckoned with. Graduating at the top of his class, he caught the attention of influential law firms. Yet, rather than joining them, he chose to fight for social justice through pro bono work, believing that the law should serve as a shield for the oppressed instead of a sword for the privileged. As years passed, Jordan built a reputation as a fierce protector of civil rights. His track record included landmark cases that shifted paradigms, securing justice not just for individuals but for entire communities. He became known not only for his legal acumen but also for his ability to connect with clients on a personal level, sharing their stories and amplifying their voices in the courtroom. His victories were significant. However, what solidified his status as the best was his relentless pursuit of equality and fairness. His commitment did not stop at individual cases. Jordan actively participated in various civil rights organizations, offering his expertise and mentorship to young aspiring lawyers from underrepresented backgrounds. He dreamed of creating a more equitable legal system where no one felt alone or unheard. To him, it was about building bridges and breaking barriers, ensuring that future generations inherited a justice system that laid the foundation for lasting change. However, despite his accomplishments, the specter of prejudice still loomed large in many arenas, exemplified by the recent incident with the Homeowners Association, HOA. It was a stark reminder that even amid significant achievements, discrimination could strike unexpectedly. This incident would serve as a pivotal moment in his career, a challenge unlike any other that set the stage for an epic legal battle. It was a call to action, one that would demand every ounce of his resolve and strategy. With his passion ignited and purpose renewed, Jordan steeled himself for what lay ahead, taking on a powerful adversary daring to assert their bigotry outright. In this fight against intolerance, he would sculpt not just a personal victory but forge a path toward true justice. Nestled amidst verdant landscapes and meticulously manicured lawns, the affluent community of Whitman Estates prided itself on its charm and exclusivity. Towering trees lined the streets, casting dappled sunlight on the elegant homes that seemed to glow with affluence. With stunning architecture, expansive gardens, and a serene lake at its center, it appeared to be the epitome of suburban perfection. Yet beneath this picturesque facade lay a troubling undercurrent, a history marred by discrimination and elitism. The Homeowners Association, HOA, responsible for maintaining the community's pristine image, had long been known for its stringent regulations and exclusionary policies. Ostensibly committed to upholding community standards, the HOA's decisions often reflected biases that aligned with their desire for a homogeneous neighborhood. New residents quickly learned that approval from the HOA wasn't merely about adhering to property guidelines. It was also about fitting into an unwritten social construct that favored certain demographics over others. The sense of belonging depended heavily on conformity to this narrow vision of community that left little room for diversity. This exclusivity hadn't gone unchallenged. Over the years, several complaints had surfaced about discriminatory practices within Whitman Estates, drawing ire from civil rights advocates and neighbors who yearned for a more inclusive environment. Lawsuits alleging racial profiling and barriers against prospective homeowners based solely on race or ethnicity had punctuated the HOA's record, tarnishing its reputation despite attempts to maintain an image of propriety. Yet each challenge seemed to reinforce rather than dismantle the status quo, an overt reminder of how deeply entrenched prejudice could persist in seemingly idyllic settings. As Jordan prepared to take on this particular HOA, He became acutely aware not only of their past but also of their current strategies that sought to silence dissenters through fear and intimidation. Residents whispered tales of those who had attempted to voice concerns about discrimination, only to find themselves ostracized or forced out under questionable circumstances. The unspoken rule was clear. Challenging the authority of the HOA could come at a steep personal cost. Jordan recognized that he was stepping into a tempestuous storm where voices clashed against systemic resistance. The very foundation of his legal battle would draw upon these narratives, stories of exclusion wrapped in walls built by privilege and power. For every resident who felt unheard or marginalized in this community, he sought to become a champion for change. Ironically, while Whitman Estates marketed itself as a safe haven for families seeking tranquility and unity, its reality painted a different picture, one fraught with division masked by elegance. With every layer he peeled back on this affluent community's facade, Jordan felt compelled not just to defend his own rights, but to illuminate a greater truth. No home should come at the cost of injustice or inequality. This fight would not only challenge existing prejudices but could ultimately redefine what it meant to call a place home in America. The day Jordan Whitaker chose to attend the Homeowners Association meeting at Whitman Estates was filled with a mix of anticipation and dread. As an accomplished lawyer committed to social justice, he felt a moral obligation to address the discriminatory practices plaguing the community he was considering joining. However, nothing could prepare him for the stark reality that awaited him within those walls. Upon entering the elegantly adorned meeting room, adorned with chandeliers and plush carpets, Jordan was met with a palpable tension that hung in the air. The members of the HOA, predominantly white and affluent, looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. He took his seat, determined to voice his concerns about the exclusionary policies that had tarnished the community's reputation. As the meeting commenced, discussions about community standards quickly escalated into something more insidious. A board member, Mr. Thompson, known for his brash demeanor, suddenly turned his attention to Jordan. With an air of casual disdain, he leaned forward and declared, "Let's be honest here. We don't want any troublemakers in our neighborhood. No blacks here." The words hit Jordan like a slap across the face, stinging and disorienting. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as he processed what had just been said. The room fell silent. Shockwaves rippled through those present, leaving an uncomfortable tension hanging in the air. Jordan could feel his heart racing, an adrenaline rush surging through him as anger and disbelief bubbled to the surface. How could anyone still think this way in today's world? As a lawyer who had fought tirelessly for equality and justice, he had encountered prejudice before, but this blatant act of discrimination cut deeper than any legal battle he had faced. It wasn't just a personal insult. It was an affront to every individual who had struggled against inequality. In that moment of raw emotion, Jordan felt both empowered and vulnerable. The faces around him reflected a range of reactions. Some were embarrassed, others indifferent, but all were complicit in allowing such toxic attitudes to persist unchecked. He gathered himself and stood up slowly, taking a deep breath before addressing the assembly. "I refuse to accept this," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "This is not just about me. It's about every person who has been marginalized because of their race. It's time for change." As he left that meeting room filled with hostility and ignorance, Jordan knew this was not just an isolated incident. It was indicative of a larger battle against systemic racism deeply rooted within Whitman Estates. Each step away from that moment solidified his resolve. He would not allow such hatred to fester unchallenged. This confrontation would ignite a fire within him, a drive to fight not only for his dignity but for the dignity of countless others affected by similar discrimination. The emotional weight of that experience fueled him as he began preparing his legal strategy against the HOA, transforming personal offense into an unstoppable force for change. He understood that this fight would be arduous but necessary. It was time to shine light on the darkness that had long overshadowed this seemingly perfect community. In the aftermath of the shocking incident at the Homeowners Association meeting, Jordan Whitaker found himself engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions that shifted from anger to resolve. He walked out of Whitman Estates with his heart racing, a myriad of thoughts flooding his mind. The gravity of such blatant discrimination weighed heavily on him, forcing him to face the uncomfortable truth that even in moments of triumph, prejudice could rear its ugly head. On the personal front, Jordan felt a mix of betrayal and sadness, feelings he hadn't expected to experience at this stage in his life. He had fought so hard to build a reputable career advocating for equality. Yet here he was, faced with a stark reminder that the fight was far from over. Reflecting on his journey, he realized that he could no longer compartmentalize his professional identity from his personal experiences. As he reached out to friends and colleagues in the wake of the incident, their reactions revealed a spectrum of support and outrage. Many expressed disbelief that such overt racism could still exist, especially in a community that marketed itself as progressive and inclusive. His close friend and fellow lawyer, Maya Reynolds, was particularly passionate during their conversation. "Jordan, this isn't just about you anymore. It's about all of us who've ever experienced bias," she insisted, her voice laced with determination. Her words resonated deeply with him, propelling him toward action. Jordan's family also had their own emotional responses. His mother, a wise and nurturing figure who had instilled in him the values of resilience and dignity, was heartbroken yet fiercely proud of her son for confronting such blatant injustice. "You have always been a fighter," she reminded him during an emotionally charged phone call. "You have the power to change hearts and minds." Knowing how much this battle would mean not just for himself but also for future generations fueled his conviction even more. Conversely, some colleagues expressed caution, suggesting that engaging in such a high-profile fight against the HOA could jeopardize his career or professional relationships within legal circles. While they voiced legitimate concerns about backlash from influential members within both the HOA and the broader community, Jordan's resolve only strengthened with each conversation. The idea of allowing fear to dictate his actions felt like a betrayal of everything he stood for as a lawyer and an advocate. These varied reactions played a crucial role in shaping Jordan's strategy moving forward. As he drafted responses to those apprehensive about taking action against the HOA while simultaneously preparing for legal proceedings, he felt deeply connected to his mission. This was more than just about combating one instance of racism. It symbolized an opportunity to address systemic issues and inspire others to collectively stand against discrimination. In due course, what began as an intensely personal affront transformed into a broader pursuit for justice. An essential part of Jordan's identity, ignited by camaraderie among allies who rallied behind him. It became clear that this fight was not merely an isolated legal battle. It represented a collective journey towards dismantling injustices entrenched within communities across the nation. With each step taken forward, Jordan embraced the fight ahead, not just for himself but as a voice for all who had encountered intolerance in silence. As Jordan Whitaker delved deeper into his legal strategy against the Homeowners Association, he understood that meticulous planning would be essential to crafting a strong case. Drawing from his extensive knowledge of civil rights law, he began with a comprehensive review of relevant statutes and precedents that could bolster his argument against the HOA's blatant discriminatory practices. This was not just about one hurtful remark. It represented a broader pattern of exclusion that had persisted within the community for years. Jordan spent countless hours poring over legal texts, identifying key laws such as the Fair Housing Act, which prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, familial status, or national origin in housing practices. He meticulously documented past cases where similar discriminatory actions had been successfully challenged. Each precedent became a building block in his strategy, illustrating how systemic racism had been confronted and dismantled in other contexts. In addition to statutory law, Jordan recognized the importance of collecting testimonies from residents who had previously faced discrimination by the HOA. He set out to create a coalition of voices willing to share their experiences. Stories that reflected not only his own but also those of others who had felt the sting of exclusion. Building this community was critical. It would serve as both evidence and emotional resonance for the case. He held meetings at local libraries and community centers, inviting residents to recount their encounters with bias and sharing how those experiences impacted their lives. As he gathered information, Jordan also made sure to analyze the HOA's communication and decision-making processes. He requested access to meeting minutes and internal communications through formal channels. This investigative angle aimed to uncover patterns of behavior that would demonstrate intentionality behind their discriminatory policies. The more detailed his evidence, the stronger his argument would become. Simultaneously, Jordan sought out expert witnesses, civil rights activists and sociologists who could speak on the broader implications of racial discrimination in housing. Their insights would lend credibility to his case, showcasing how exclusionary practices not only harmed individuals, but also eroded community cohesion and trust. Throughout this phase of preparation, Jordan maintained an unwavering focus on his ultimate goal: to shine a light on systemic injustice while holding the HOA accountable for its actions. He envisioned this case as more than just a legal battle. It was an opportunity to ignite a movement for change within Whitman Estates and beyond. As he drafted his legal complaint, every line reflected not only an assertion of rights but also a call for transformation. A demand for recognition that every individual deserves a place where they feel safe and valued. With each passing day, Jordan felt more determined. He was not only fighting for himself but also for all those silenced by prejudice. This case would pave the way for future generations, ensuring that no one else would ever have to endure such blatant discrimination again. As he prepared to file the lawsuit against the HOA, a palpable sense of purpose enveloped him. This was his moment to stand firm against intolerance and advocate for justice on behalf of those who had suffered in silence for far too long. As Jordan Whitaker pushed forward with his legal preparations against the Homeowners Association, he knew that building a compelling case would require a thorough gathering of evidence. He understood that the power of his lawsuit would lie not only in the legal framework but also in the real experiences of those affected by the HOA's exclusionary policies. To start, Jordan organized a series of interviews with residents of Whitman Estates, those who had previously spoken up about discrimination and others who had remained silent out of fear or resignation. Each encounter proved to be both illuminating and heartbreaking, as residents shared their stories of feeling unwelcome or marginalized. Some recounted moments when they had been denied access to community events, while others discussed the disdainful comments they received when attempting to participate in neighborhood gatherings. These narratives became invaluable, providing a personal lens through which to view the systemic issues at play. Jordan recorded every interview meticulously, ensuring he captured not just facts but also the emotion behind each account. The stories he collected painted a troubling portrait of how prejudice had seeped into daily life within the community. He felt a responsibility to amplify these voices. Their experiences were crucial to illustrating the true impact of the HOA's policies. By sharing their tales, Jordan could show that this fight was not just personal. It represented a collective struggle for dignity and acceptance. Simultaneously, he turned his attention to archiving relevant documentation related to past incidents and HOA communications. He requested access to meeting minutes, internal memos, and policy documents that outlined membership requirements and community regulations. What he uncovered was alarming. Protocols that appeared innocuous on the surface masked exclusionary practices hiding in plain sight. Jordan recognized that these documents could serve as critical evidence demonstrating patterns of bias and intent. To further strengthen his case, Jordan explored historical precedents where similar discriminatory practices had been successfully challenged in court. He immersed himself in case law from around the country, identifying rulings that favored victims of housing discrimination under both federal and state laws. One particularly poignant case involved an HOA facing legal action after an incident strikingly similar to his own experience in Whitman Estates. Drawing parallels sparked new ideas for his arguments and illuminated strategies used by other advocates that might be applicable in his own legal battle. In addition to reviewing legal precedents, Jordan sought out civil rights organizations and academic institutions for expert testimonies. He reached out to sociologists and activists who could shed light on the societal implications of racism within housing policies. Understanding that this issue extended beyond personal grievances into broader social dynamics would lend significant weight to his arguments in court. As evidence began to accumulate, so did Jordan's sense of purpose. Each story gathered from residents added layers to his determination. Each document unearthed felt like a weapon against intolerance. Crafting his lawsuit was not merely about seeking damages or holding the HOA accountable. It was about weaving together a narrative that encapsulated years of injustice while paving the way for future change. With every piece of evidence gathered, Jordan's resolve grew stronger. He was ready to confront not just an entity but an entrenched system fighting against progress. This preparation transformed into more than a quest for justice. It became a relentless pursuit to reclaim dignity for himself and those who had been silenced for too long within Whitman Estate's exclusive walls. As Jordan Whittaker dove deeper into the preparations for his lawsuit against the Homeowners Association, he quickly realized that the path to justice was fraught with significant challenges. The pushback from the HOA was immediate and relentless. Shortly after announcing his intentions to challenge their discriminatory practices, he received a letter from their legal team, threatening him with defamation if he continued to speak publicly about his experiences. This tactic was clearly designed to intimidate not only him but also any residents considering coming forward with their own stories. Jordan understood that this was just the beginning of a legal battle that would likely be as much about resilience as it was about rights. He braced himself for potential media scrutiny as well. While he knew that bringing this issue to light could rally support and raise awareness, it also risked painting him as a divisive figure within an upscale community that prided itself on exclusivity. He could already envision headlines portraying him as a troublemaker rather than a champion for justice, which weighed heavily on his mind. Amidst these external pressures, Jordan faced internal conflicts as well. Doubts began to creep in. Was he taking on too powerful an adversary? Could one man truly challenge the entrenched interests of an affluent community? These questions gnawed at him during late-night sessions poring over case law and testimonies. He often found himself reflecting on the words of his mother, reminding him that true change rarely came without sacrifice or struggle. To make matters more complicated, some residents who had initially supported him started to withdraw their involvement. A few expressed concern about retaliation from the HOA, fearing they might face backlash or lose their standing in the community. Jordan felt frustrated but understood their hesitation. Fear can often silence even those with the most compelling stories. This made it all the more crucial for him to remain steadfast and reassure them that they would not have to face this battle alone. In addition to these obstacles, Jordan had to navigate the emotional toll of fighting against systemic racism while simultaneously managing his professional responsibilities. His work in civil rights law demanded immense energy and focus, leaving little room for personal life or self-care. Friends began noticing his weariness, his usual spark dimmed by the weight of what lay ahead. Despite these tribulations, Jordan found solace in moments of reflection, where he reminded himself of why this fight mattered so profoundly, not just for his dignity, but for all those who had suffered in silence due to prejudice. Every setback became fuel for his resolve. Every moment of doubt transformed into determination. As he approached the filing date for his lawsuit, Jordan recognized that overcoming these challenges would be paramount not only for his case but also for sending a resounding message against intolerance. The journey ahead promised to be tumultuous. However, armed with evidence and bolstered by a growing network of supporters, those ready to stand alongside him, he steeled himself for what was bound to be one of the most significant battles of his career. With each passing day, he embraced this conflict as an opportunity, a chance not just for personal vindication, but also to pave the way toward meaningful change within Whitman Estates and beyond. The stakes were high, but so were the hopes tied to this fight against discrimination and injustice. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Jordan Whittaker prepared to face off against the Homeowners Association, now represented by a formidable legal team that sought to undermine his claims. The stakes were high, not just for him but for all who had suffered in silence. As the judge entered and settled into position, Jordan's heart raced. This was the moment he had been fighting for. The trial commenced with the HOA's attorney delivering a polished opening statement, attempting to paint Jordan as a disgruntled resident seeking to disrupt the harmony of Whitman Estates. They argued that his claims were rooted in personal grievances rather than evidence of systemic discrimination. It was a calculated move designed to sow doubt in the minds of the jury. In stark contrast, Jordan's opening remarks were infused with passion and purpose. He spoke not only of his own experiences but also of those of the community members he had interviewed. "This case is about more than me," he asserted, his voice steady yet powerful. It's about every individual who has faced exclusion and prejudice within these walls. He framed the narrative as a collective struggle against intolerance, pulling at the heartstrings of those present. Witness testimonies became pivotal moments in the trial. Residents took the stand one by one, recounting their personal experiences with discrimination from the HOA. An elderly woman named Mrs. Johnson spoke of being denied entry to community events because of her race, her voice trembling with emotion as she recalled feeling ostracized. The jury listened intently, visibly moved by her vulnerability. Jordan skillfully cross-examined HOA board members, highlighting inconsistencies in their statements and policies. He deftly pointed out how certain regulations had disproportionately affected people of color while allowing others to flout rules without consequence. Each exchange added weight to his case and showcased his ability as an advocate. As the trial progressed, media attention intensified. Cameras flashed from the back of the room, capturing every moment as reporters eagerly documented the unfolding drama. While this press coverage could bolster public support for Jordan's cause, it also brought uninvited scrutiny and pressure. He felt the weight of those watching closely, friends who cheered him on and opponents eager to see him falter. Throughout it all, Jordan remained resolute, leaning on the support from those who had rallied behind him. His network of allies provided emotional strength. They sent messages of encouragement that reminded him why he was there in the first place: to fight for justice and equality. In a dramatic turn during closing arguments, Jordan encapsulated his journey and the broader implications of this fight for civil rights. "This lawsuit is about dismantling fear," he declared passionately. "It's about ensuring that no one else has to endure what I and so many others have faced." His words resonated deeply in the courtroom, leaving a lasting impression on both jurors and spectators alike. As the jury deliberated, anticipation hung thick in the air. Every moment felt like an eternity as Jordan reflected on what this case represented, not just for himself but for countless others who had been silenced by discrimination. The outcome would reverberate beyond Whitman Estates, potentially ushering in a new era of accountability and change within communities across America. Jordan's heart pounded in his chest as he awaited their decision. No matter what happened next, he knew he had ignited something powerful, a movement toward justice that could no longer be ignored. As the trial progressed, Jordan Whitaker's case began to draw significant public attention, fueled by local media coverage and the support of civil rights organizations. The story of a respected black lawyer facing off against the Homeowners Association became a rallying cry for many who had experienced similar injustices. News outlets reported extensively on the case, highlighting both the blatant racism that sparked the lawsuit and the broader implications for communities grappling with exclusionary practices. Jordan's compelling narrative resonated not only within Whitman Estates but also reached neighboring communities and activists far beyond. Social media platforms buzzed with conversations about the trial, amplifying voices previously silenced by fear. Hashtags like #JusticeForJordan and #EndHOABias gained traction, creating a movement that urged individuals to stand against discrimination and advocate for equality. The press coverage included interviews with residents who shared their own struggles with the HOA policies, adding layers of legitimacy to Jordan's claims. These testimonials, filled with emotion and raw truth, humanized the legal battle and brought a sense of urgency to the fight against systemic racism. As journalists continued to cover developments in the courtroom, public interest skyrocketed, transforming Jordan's pursuit of justice into a community-wide cause célèbre. Civil rights organizations quickly rallied around Jordan's case, seeing it as an opportunity to highlight ongoing discrimination in housing policies. Activists organized rallies outside the courthouse, drawing crowds who waved signs bearing messages of solidarity. Banners stating, "No room for racism," and "We stand with Jordan," adorned the streets, making it clear that this fight was about more than one man. It was an indictment of systemic inequities that plagued many neighborhoods across America. The increased scrutiny pressured the HOA in ways they hadn't anticipated. As public sentiment shifted against them, board members became increasingly defensive in their courtroom demeanor. Every time a new witness testified or a new piece of evidence emerged supporting Jordan's claims, it sparked renewed outrage from supporters outside the courthouse. This mounting pressure forced HOA representatives to confront not only a legal challenge but also reputational damage that could follow them long after the trial concluded. Jordan felt empowered by the support from the community and civil rights advocates, people he had never met but who now stood firmly behind him in solidarity. Their encouragement bolstered his resolve. He understood he was partaking in something larger than himself, a historical moment urging for change. He recognized that every ripple of support strengthened not just his case but also the broader battle against discrimination. As media cameras captured each moment within the courtroom, Jordan made sure to acknowledge those who were pushing for change alongside him. He aimed to use his platform not merely for personal success but also as a means of igniting an ongoing conversation about inequality and justice that needed to be front and center in America. With each passing day of testimony and growing support, it became clear. This lawsuit transcended its immediate context. It had become a pivotal moment in a wider struggle for equality. The battle against discrimination would continue long after this trial concluded, fueled by awareness raised during these proceedings and driven by those who refused to remain silent any longer. Jordan knew that whatever verdict awaited him could inspire others to join this essential fight, one designed not just for victims but for an entire society seeking true equity moving forward. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric as everyone awaited the verdict in Jordan Whitaker's landmark case against the Homeowners Association. After weeks of intense testimony, emotional appeals, and impassioned arguments, the jury had finally reached a decision. As the judge entered the room, a hush fell over the crowd, filled with supporters and curious onlookers who had been following the trial closely. Jordan sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by his legal team and a few supporters who had stood by him throughout this arduous journey. His heart raced, reflecting a mix of anxiety and hope. This moment was not just about him. It represented the culmination of a collective struggle against deep-rooted prejudice and discrimination that had persisted for far too long in Whitman Estates. The judge called for order and began to read the verdict. "We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Jordan Whitaker." The words hung in the air like a clarion call. Gasps erupted from the audience, followed by an eruption of applause and cheers as the reality of the verdict sank in. Jordan felt tears welling up in his eyes. He had fought so hard for this moment, and now it was here, a validation of everything he had endured. As the judge continued to outline the findings, it became clear that the jury had not only recognized individual instances of discrimination but also acknowledged systemic issues within the HOA's practices. The ruling came with a substantial $5 million in damages, a significant sum that echoed beyond financial restitution. It symbolized accountability for years of exclusionary policies that had marginalized so many. Reactions from all parties were profound. Supporters erupted into joyous celebration, embracing one another as they recognized the historical significance of the verdict. Civil rights activists in attendance viewed this as a pivotal victory that could inspire similar challenges across the country. Jordan's friends and family beamed with pride. They understood how much this fight meant to him and how it would resonate with countless others who felt voiceless. On the other side of the courtroom, members of the HOA appeared visibly shaken. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to anger. They had underestimated Jordan's resolve and the power of community support. The verdict served as a stark reminder that systemic racism would no longer be tolerated, especially within their ranks. As media cameras captured every moment, reporters flocked to Jordan for interviews. He took a deep breath before speaking, aware that his words would carry weight beyond this case. "This victory isn't just mine," he declared passionately to the gathered media. "It belongs to everyone who has faced discrimination and struggled for equality. Today, we take a step closer to dismantling a system that thrives on exclusion." The coverage of this verdict sent ripples through communities far and wide. It ignited conversations about racial equity in housing practices and inspired activists to push even harder against systemic injustices across America. Jordan understood that this was more than just a personal triumph. It marked a watershed moment, a declaration that change was possible. As he left the courthouse surrounded by supporters chanting his name, Jordan felt an overwhelming sense of purpose wash over him. This was not an end but rather a beginning, a catalyst for ongoing dialogue about race, inclusion, and justice in housing policies everywhere. He knew that while today's victory was monumental, there was still much work to be done to ensure that such discrimination would never happen again. With renewed energy coursing through him, Jordan embraced this new chapter not just as a lawyer, but as an advocate for those who needed their voices amplified in society's ongoing battle against intolerance. In the aftermath of Jordan Whittaker's landmark victory against the Homeowners Association, the atmosphere in Whitman Estates began to shift. News of the verdict reverberated throughout the community, igniting discussions about racial equity and inclusion among residents. Many who had been silent before felt encouraged to voice their experiences of discrimination, while others expressed hope that change was finally on the horizon. The HOA, confronted with its newfound notoriety, faced substantial pressure to reassess its policies and practices. Board members convened emergency meetings to strategize how they might restore their tarnished reputation. Recognizing the need for reform, they announced plans to revise their bylaws and implement diversity training for existing board members and staff. While many were skeptical of these efforts, some viewed them as a necessary first step toward creating a more inclusive environment. For Jordan, the victory was bittersweet. Reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point, he contemplated both his own feelings of triumph and the ongoing struggle for justice faced by many in marginalized communities. The case had highlighted not only his fight but also that of countless others who felt invisible within the system. He recognized that while progress had been made, significant work remained to dismantle deeply entrenched prejudices that still existed not just in Whitman Estates but across the country. In interviews following the verdict, Jordan articulated a vision for what true justice should look like. This isn't simply about winning a lawsuit. It's about fostering an environment where every person feels welcome and valued, he emphasized passionately. He also understood that his case could serve as a blueprint for others facing similar challenges, encouraging them to stand up against discriminatory practices and demand accountability. As conversations around racial discrimination gained momentum in local media, Jordan found himself in the role of a spokesperson for change. He participated in panel discussions and community forums, sharing insights from his experience and advocating for systemic reforms. With each opportunity to speak out, he felt an increasing sense of purpose. His experience had become a catalyst not just for personal redemption but for societal transformation. Moreover, Jordan took special care to engage with young activists eager to learn from his journey. He organized workshops aimed at empowering them with legal knowledge and advocacy skills, emphasizing the importance of grassroots movements in effecting change. Seeing new generations committed to this cause gave him renewed hope. He realized that while battles may be lost along the way, immense potential lay in the collective action of those willing to stand up against injustice. As time passed, Jordan continued to reflect on the meaning of his victory. It wasn't just about financial restitution or legal wins. It symbolized a broader push for equity that transcended individual circumstances. He felt proud knowing that he had sparked an essential dialogue within his community and inspired many individuals to recognize their own agency in driving change. Ultimately, Jordan embraced his role as an advocate with even greater fervor. The journey toward justice was far from over. Each day presented new challenges and hurdles to overcome. Yet armed with determination and backed by a growing community of allies committed to equality, he remained resolute in his belief that real progress was possible, a belief that would guide him as he continued fighting against intolerance long into the future. The landmark victory in Jordan Whittaker's case against the Homeowners Association reverberated far beyond the confines of Whitman Estates, setting a powerful precedent for discussions about racism in housing policies across the nation. The case not only spotlighted individual acts of discrimination but also highlighted systemic issues that have historically plagued many affluent communities. By affirming the jury's recognition of these problems, Jordan's win served as a clarion call for others who had experienced similar injustices to step forward and demand accountability. Legal experts and civil rights advocates viewed this verdict as a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle against exclusionary practices in housing. Jordan's case illustrated that the law could be effectively employed as a tool for social change, challenging the status quo and encouraging other marginalized individuals to seek justice. The substantial award of $5 million was not merely a financial settlement. It represented validation for those who had long felt powerless in the face of institutional racism. In the weeks following the verdict, various civil rights organizations began to leverage Jordan's case as a rallying point. They called for citywide reforms to address discriminatory housing policies and encouraged municipalities to review their own HOA regulations. This heightened scrutiny led to legislative discussions about potential changes at local and state levels aimed at ensuring equitable treatment for all residents, regardless of race. The media played a crucial role in amplifying the implications of this case, featuring stories that highlighted not only Jordan's journey but also those of countless individuals across America who faced similar barriers. Articles and broadcasts explored the broader concept of racial equity in housing, examining how systemic practices can perpetuate inequality even within seemingly diverse communities. The coverage sparked nationwide conversations, leading to increased demands for policy reviews and changes aimed at dismantling entrenched biases. In addition to inspiring policy discussions, Jordan's case sparked grassroots movements advocating for racial equality in housing. Activists organized events and educational campaigns aimed at raising awareness about discrimination in real estate practices and the importance of fostering inclusive environments. These initiatives emphasized collective action as essential to combating systemic issues, reinforcing that community engagement was a vital aspect of achieving lasting change. Jordan himself became a prominent voice in these ongoing discussions. He participated in panels and conferences where he shared insights from his experience, urging attendees to recognize their power in advocating for justice. His message underscored that while legal battles are significant, true progress requires continuous effort from everyone committed to equity, both inside and outside courtrooms. Moreover, Jordan emphasized the importance of preventive measures to protect future generations from facing similar discrimination. He began collaborating with schools and community organizations to develop educational programs focusing on civil rights and advocacy skills, aiming to empower young activists with the knowledge needed to challenge injustice head-on. As discussions about racial equity in housing gained traction nationwide, Jordan recognized that his victory was just one chapter in a much larger narrative, a narrative that required sustained momentum to foster genuine change. He remained committed to pushing forward, believing that every conversation initiated from this landmark case could lead to transformative shifts in how communities approach inclusivity and equality. In essence, the implications of Jordan Whitaker's case reach far beyond its immediate context. It serves as a catalyst for ongoing dialogue about race, systemic discrimination, and social justice, a clarion call for action that promises to reverberate through future legal battles and community efforts alike. With each new initiative inspired by his victory, Jordan's legacy grows, reminding us all that change is possible when individuals stand together against intolerance. In the wake of his landmark victory, Jordan Whitaker stood at a pivotal crossroads, both personally and professionally. The journey he had undertaken to confront systemic racism within the Homeowners Association was not merely a battle one. It symbolized the resilience and determination required to face discrimination head-on. For Jordan, this triumph was a testament to the power of advocacy and the importance of never backing down in the pursuit of justice. As he reflected on the challenges he had faced, Jordan felt a profound sense of responsibility to those who had supported him and those who had yet to find their voice. He understood that change did not come easily. It required relentless effort and unwavering commitment from individuals willing to stand up against injustice. This victory energized him. He realized that it was not just his personal achievement but a collective win for all marginalized communities striving for equality. Motivated by this realization, Jordan committed himself to continued advocacy for civil rights and social justice. He began organizing workshops and community forums aimed at educating residents about their rights, empowering individuals to challenge discriminatory practices in their own lives. His focus was on fostering an environment where everyone felt safe and valued, urging participants to understand that they were not alone in their struggles. Jordan also recognized the importance of collaboration with other activists and organizations in amplifying their collective voices. He reached out to local groups dedicated to fighting against systemic inequalities, joining forces to create campaigns that highlighted issues affecting marginalized communities beyond housing. Together, they hosted events urging local leaders to enact policies promoting inclusivity and responsible governance. While reflecting on his legal battle, Jordan emphasized the significance of resilience in the face of discrimination. He often shared stories from his own experience, illustrating how doubt and fear could be transformed into strength and motivation. "We must remain steadfast," he would say passionately during his talks. "Each time we speak out against injustice, we chip away at the walls of intolerance." Jordan's advocacy extended to schools as well. He collaborated with educators to integrate discussions about race, equity, and justice into curriculums. He believed that by instilling these values in young minds, future generations would be better equipped to recognize prejudice and advocate for change before they encountered it themselves. The lessons learned from his case resonated beyond Whitman estates, sparking dialogue across various platforms regarding racial equity in housing policies nationwide. Jordan understood that this moment called for sustained momentum, an ongoing commitment to challenge systemic inequalities at every level of society. As he gazed out at gatherings filled with supporters eager to learn and engage, Jordan felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight for justice would continue, but with each individual empowered by knowledge and courage, progress became increasingly attainable. Ultimately, Jordan's journey served as a powerful reminder that resilience is essential in confronting discrimination. His story encouraged others to rise up against injustices, fostering solidarity within communities and igniting a passion for advocacy that would surely ripple through time. With each step taken towards equality, Jordan inspired hope that change is possible when individuals join together in solidarity against intolerance, a legacy that will endure long after any single victory is celebrated.